welcome to another edition of the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. Am I loud, or do I need to be louder? Doesn't matter. I don't. I just got my new hearing aids today, but I have to use a headset for this kind of stuff. I am pleased to be joined by the Queen of Hoops, Megan Price.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Having you on is awesome, baby.
Yeah.
As Dick Vitale would say, since you're a basketball person, and I worked with Dick Vitale back in 1979 when
Oh,
we were
wow.
at WXYZ Radio in Detroit. He
Okay.
preceded me, and I was a producer of Sports Talk. So there you go. When I say awesome, baby, I have to copy Dick Vitale. Megan, it's really
Right.
a pleasure to have you on. I know you work with Candy Ebling, my wife, on Chicks and Salsa and Three Chicks in a Pod, and I want to thank you very much for taking her with you. She has a great time working with you girls, and
Yes.
it so happens I'm so delighted to have you on, and hopefully we'll do more of these basketball shows together, because if there's
Absolutely.
anybody that I know is more qualified to talk about it, it's definitely you. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
So let's get it going.
Okay.
Devastating injury. The USC star JuJu Watkins. Couple questions for you, Megan. How
Right.
far will USC go, and will she return to college?
I do believe that she will return. So she has in the women's, you have to play. I think you have to be 22 to go into the draft, or play all 3 years of eligibility. So there is a little leeway as far as year wise, but you have to be 22 to go into the WNBA draft. So
Okay.
I feel like she'll be back in college. I think that she definitely has more records to break because she was already on the way breaking records. So I think we'll see her again. I don't think we'll see her next season at all, probably. And I'm fine with that. JuJu is a generational talent. So I feel like take your time coming back and come back when you're ready.
All right, got some activity in the chat room already. Eddie Prather, feel bad for JuJu. Cheryl,
Yeah,
you're
same.
definitely not alone. All right, we'll move on. Legendary women's basketball star Cheryl Miller. Get this, Megan, is firing back at Caitlin Clark's critics, saying, "You big dummies." Okay, I love this
All
quote.
right.
Is she getting hyped? Yes, but she was in the backyard putting in the same time, saying sometimes maybe more than you were. You're getting paid. What are your thoughts about Cheryl Miller? Keep in mind, okay, she's the best basketball player in her family when you talk about her brother Reggie. So that's how
Right.
competitive the Miller family is. You think she's on target when she makes these credits attacking Caitlin Clark's critics?
I'll say this. I think that sometimes the statements are misconstrued by extreme fandom. Um, and so, like, I don't think that necessarily those comments that are viewed as harsh or critical are necessarily intended that way. Like, I think what Cheryl Swoop said about, and DT said the same thing, that there is a learning curve when you go into the pro. And that's for anybody in any league. There's always going to be an adjustment going from college level to the pro level. It just is what that is. When you're playing college, you might be the only person on that squad that's going to go professional. When you're in the pros, everybody's a professional. So, there is absolutely a learning curve, and nobody's going to take it easy on somebody that's a generational talent. I don't think anybody took it easy on LeBron because we knew what LeBron was going to be. However, I do agree with how Cheryl phrased it. She is somebody that is doing wonders for this game, or for this side of the game on women's ball. And you can't deny that. You can't deny the talent that's there either, regardless of winning a ring on the NCAA level or not. I still put her in top 5 of all time in college athletes as far as college basketball. So, there are some that have won more, and obviously that is important because for me, it's Breanna Stewart that's at number 1, because 4 championships, I think that speaks for itself. Winning does matter. However, her records that she broke, those matter too. And what she did at Iowa was special. So yeah, I put her in the top 5. As far as Cheryl goes, she's very animated. We've seen it for a long time in that rivalry between her and Reggie, and I wouldn't expect anything different.
Well, keep in mind, this is the anniversary of the game with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird in 1979 in Salt Lake City. I was old enough to understand it, watch it. The most watched game in the history of college basketball. So what I mean by this is Caitlin Clark is not only a generational talent in the WNBA, but she's making these people a lot of money, and she's taking this to a bigger level in terms of what they're able to do. So my thoughts are get off her back and enjoy the money. I'm not going to get into the labor situation with them because obviously we may address that another time. But the
Right.
WNBA's growth single-handedly gone up. Well, think about the Indiana Fever for a moment. A lot of their games are sold out. They've had to go to bigger
Mhm.
stadiums. So for all these critics to come after her is ridiculous.
However, I'll kind of play devil's advocate on that and say that,
Okay.
their growth was happening before Caitlin got there. There were records that were being broken before Caitlin got to the league. However, the lights are much brighter now that Caitlin's there. So it's not a knock to Caitlin whatsoever. The lights are much brighter because her and her entire draft class really brought star power. So, but yeah, she makes a huge difference. So it's not a knock on either way, but to say that they weren't selling out arenas because Vegas had to go to T-Mobile Stadium the year before Caitlin even got there. So there were other instances, but it's amplified because of CC.
Let's go to the chat room, Megan. You're a popular young lady. Caitlin, Andy Prather's on a roll. We'll let him go. Caitlin Clark critics are these are their opinions. CC is a great player. I've not seen counting titles. George Boris. Hey, Scott, looking good. Thanks, George. Of course, I think she looks way better than I do. Eddie Prather and College Women's Hoops, and great point, Megan. There you go. We'll
Well,
continue
appreciate
on. There you go. Chat room's active. By the way, Caitlin, the way Caitlin can battle Steph Curry in threes is just fantastic. Well, how do you
Oh,
want to
I
react?
agree. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I absolutely agree with that point. I would love to see, and I didn't have a problem that she didn't participate in the 3-point contest right now. She said that she wanted her first 3-point contest to be for her league, and I respect that.
fair enough. I like that. I like the way you put that. And obviously, George Boris comes up with a lot of good points as well. Talk about Shaka Smart for a moment. He takes a very
Oh,
different approach. This
yeah.
guy. He refuses to negotiate with agents, and he just says they just need to tell his players just stay away. He doesn't play that NIL game. This guy's a really good coach, Shaka Smart. You
I
know,
love me some Shaka Smart. So y'all know that I'm a Texas fan through and through, Texas forever. I wish Shaka was still at Texas. I wasn't quite ready to move on from him. However, I do understand losing in the first round to Abilene Christian was kind of the final nail in the coffin for Shaka in Texas. Texas has a way of moving on from their coaches before they should, in my opinion. I mean, still my school, but I love him at Marquette, though. I think that is a really great market for him. He's very much an East Coast type of coach. And I love culture builders personally, and that is what Shaka Smart is. So I don't have a problem with it. I love it.
well, again, here's a guy who's bold, and I repeat, Megan,
Mhm.
very bold. He's telling agents that I don't need these guys. Stay away.
Right.
We're going to do it a certain way. Not it's not every school can't get into big NIL money, let
Right.
alone the ones that are only basketball only. You're talking,
Right.
they don't, Marquette doesn't have a football program, to my understanding. So Shaka is telling people to stay away. I know the type
Right.
of player I want, and if you can't handle it, I don't even need you around here. And that is bold in its own right. We're going to another topic. Candy Eppling's going to come up for a station break. But Russell Westbrook is now the second point guard in NBA history to reach 26,000 career points. And he's only 708 points behind Oscar Robertson for
Mhm.
most in NBA history. Do you feel that Russell's the most disrespected player in the NBA?
Absolutely. I am a huge Westbrook fan. So the closest NBA market to me, I'm here in Amarillo, obviously. OKC is the closest market to us, and have been a huge fan. You can't say anything bad about Russ, in my opinion. Off the court, he married his college sweetheart or high school sweetheart. They have a lovely family. He's got a little bit of a weird fashion sense, but other than that, like he's such a likable guy. And then on the court, you never question, did he leave it all there? Does he do some bonehead
Right.
moves sometimes? Does he need a coach or a star on the team that can kind of rein him in when he does those bonehead moves? And I think it just comes from he's so excited in that moment. So it's not that I think it's detrimental towards the team. It's just he needs to be reined in sometimes. Him on the bench there in Denver is one of the best fits I've seen in a very long time. And I love how Mike Malone is utilizing him over there.
Michael Malone, just want to know an interesting story about him, Megan. I worked with Michael Malone's dad, Brendan Malone, when I was covering the Bad Boys and the Detroit Pistons.
Oh, okay. Okay.
In
Very
fact,
cool.
I'll even take it a step further. You ready for this story, Megan?
Hmm.
I'm covering the Detroit Pistons over at the Richfield Coliseum in Richfield, Ohio, which is outside of Cleveland. So we
Okay.
go to this. I'm staying at the Pistons Hotel. Get this. So Brendan Malone. Here we are. I got me in the Malones here mixed up. Brendan Malone and Brendan Sir were coaches for the assistants at the time. They
Okay.
asked me to take a ride over to a restaurant, and Brendan Malone says, because he saw me telegraphing my spot, going to a corner spot in there, and they say, Scotty, would you like me? You call me Scotty, Megan. You'll find that I go down. Motor City Mad Mob on the air with Scotty if you like me. If you don't, well,
Okay.
just a little tip. So Brendan sees I went to that spot. Scotty, I noticed you were going to that corner spot. And you just knew you were going to do it. Why'd you do that? Well, coach, let me tell you something. If you go to the corner spot, that means that one side of your vehicle is not going to get damaged.
Right.
The other side of that was good. I like it, man. These guys, hey, do you mind if I hang with you for dinner? I mean, you have to pay for me. No, we don't mind. They're watching games, scouting the point.
Oh, wow.
And I'm hanging out with Malone and Sir, who ended up, by the way, getting rings and learning a ton about basketball.
Right. Very cool. Very cool story. This is the
That's
Bill
teaching them
Lambier
how to
days.
park. I'm sorry.
This was the Bill Lambier days.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Him and
I'm a huge fan of Bill Lambier. And to the question in the comment section, yes, I do know of Bonham Middle School. So I have lived in this area my entire life, and I know all about Amarillo.
Well, Bill Lambier and I didn't get along, so I don't mean to damper your feelings toward him, but I'll tell
Oh,
you what. I'll tell you why I don't get along with him. First of all, he never got a head coaching job in the NBA because he burned so many bridges. But here's what happened.
right.
I'm at the Boston Garden with a busted up leg. I tore my ankle skiing in Vermont on Christmas Day. Now, whether you know it or not, Dennis Rodman was one of my good friends back in the day, and he
Oh,
didn't
wow.
go up in deep end, man. And in fact, I bowled with Rodman. So Bill is being a jerk inside the Pistons locker room, and Dennis and I were talking. Bill Lambier is just being a complete jerk. I said, so I talked to Bill Lambier. You know, I told him, hey, Bill, let me tell you something, pal. Just because you can afford your car payment doesn't mean I can afford mine. You got it? And then Dennis Rodman comes to my defense and Bill, get out of here. And so then Bill looks at him because you don't mess with Dennis. He's 6'9" and you can
Right.
push it around a little, but we're friends. You don't mess with his friend. So Bill did leave, and Dennis and I had a great time. So it's a good story.
That's a very cool story as well. I'll chime in and say the reason I love him is because of everything he's done for women's basketball. They're at Detroit. There's there's 3 teams that are tied at first with 4 championships, and then Detroit is right below that with 3 championships. So, and then a lot of people don't know this, but the team that as it is or as it was in their greatness there in Vegas, the Aces, Bill Lambier constructed that team. So I love what he's done for the women's basketball.
Oh, that's just the Bible. I'm not saying he hadn't done anything with basketball, but he wasn't making my car payment. We didn't like each other.
Okay.
No, but hey, listen, he guided the Detroit Shock to World Championships too, and of course, when he did it in Vegas. So hey, listen, he's a great women's coach, and the only kind of sniff was when he ended up getting in the NBA when Kurt Rambis, his nemesis, the Lakers, hired him with the Wolves, and he never got hired again. Even Isaiah Thomas never hired this guy. And their teammates, if he ever had a chance to get a job anywhere, Megan, it would have been with Isaiah, but he didn't even hire him.
Oh, dang.
It took Kurt Rambis to do it. Really? Seriously? Really? My hat. You know what
Right.
And we know we're going to a station break, too, with your other colleague, Candy Edley, to come on the screen and give it for us, so we have you 3.
You are listening to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. If you see the red subscribe button, hit it, like us, share us with all your friends and family. The South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. If you like some of the stories he's telling tonight, there's more of those in that book, so go grab that book. Link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, call Scott, 954-304-4941. If you want to be a guest, just email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to you, Scott.
Great stuff. A lot of good comments. So obviously, you know about James Bonham, Minnesota, George Bluebird. You know, your neck of the woods well. And that's cool that Megan and I went to Bonham 7th and 8th grade. Look at that. My God.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Small world, Judy Wyatt. What's up, Eddie? There we go. Great stuff. So anyway, we'll continue on. We're going to talk about the Dallas Mavericks.
Okay.
And that's this. They're reportedly asked the NBA for salary cap relief amid injury struggles via Brian Windhorst and Hoop Collective. There are concerns that they might have to forfeit games if circumstances fall a certain way. What are your thoughts about the Dallas Mavericks? This is a tough situation when you're talking about forfeiting games.
I can't believe the NBA didn't grant them any grace there with their salary cap, considering the injuries that they have. I don't know. I'll be honest. I have kind of a conspiracy theory going with this. I think this is one giant plan to get Dallas to buy out of the Mavericks. I think they're on their way to be the team in Vegas. So the owners of the Mavericks now, they're in the gambling business. This is their first team that they've ever ventured into. So they would much rather live in Vegas. So I think it's a very elaborate plan to get the Mavericks to Vegas.
Well, to validate your point, believe it or not, conspiracy theory or not, isn't Adelson one of the owners, and her husband was a guy trying to be behind to get a team over the baseball team, I believe, or was it the Raiders, I think. So there's a little bit of a Vegas connection there
is. I definitely think we see that there. Now, obviously, the Dallas has to buy out of the team. And I think we'll see that happen, though, because obviously Silver's already said that Seattle and Vegas are the next places to get teams. There was no timeline that was given on this. So I think with them not making money currently, they're not going to add new teams, but for a team to relocate, that's possible. And I see that happening with the Mavs. Texas already has 2 other teams, and the Mavs have the least amount of championships. So as a Spurs fan,
Great stuff. We'll continue this conversation, Megan, about NBA expansion. I have some thoughts about that I want to share with you in a future show. I expect you and I should do a lot more basketball shows. So I have a bigger history of basketball than most people think. Dealing with my days, covering the Bad Boys and the Pistons for the better part of 11 years. I've gone to their games in Florida as well as Phoenix and LA. So I've gotten around a little bit. So I feel like I have my basketball match here right across the street from me. Great stuff, Megan.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. So in his career, LeBron James seems, get this, have a 76 of 123 record, 38.2% in games he's missed, considering it's odd that he's played on super teams. What are your thoughts about that?
I think LeBron he's definitely one of the greatest to ever do it. Like, I don't think you can take that away from him, whatever roster he was on, whether he was kind of by himself in Cleveland before he decided to go to Miami. And when I say by himself, clearly, I know he had some supporting cast, but he didn't have a ton around him. I don't like what he's done there in LA, trying to build his own super teams there and including his input on the coaching staff. Honestly, I think that there needs to be some clear-cut lines. However, I love this move with Luka to LA. So I think that we could see LeBron. Obviously, we're seeing somebody that is taking it to a different level. Nobody's played at this level for this long. Yes, Jordan came back. We've seen some other players that played past their 40s. Vince Carter retired and was still playing very well, but it's not the same level as what LeBron is doing. So I think you have to respect that, regardless of whatever roster he's on.
So I want to ask you a question. This may be the difference between our generations. Ready? How do you think LeBron James would have done back in the days when basketball was physical? Back in the day when you had to actually
Right.
learn it the hard way. Yeah.
Well, I want to preface this by saying Jordan's my goat. You know, just
all right.
yeah, I think it's generational. And for me, that generation is what made me fall in love with basketball. And at the time, it was Reggie Miller was my guy. And he was unfortunately in the same era as Jordan, or I think he probably would have been revered in a different manner. But I think LeBron's physicality would fare just fine in any era of basketball, to be perfectly honest. I don't think that I mean, his size and his weight, like the only other person that really kind of had that same stature, and I think LeBron is a little more cut up than him, was Magic.
Well, you're unbelievable. My goat, actually, Megan, is Magic Johnson.
And like I say, I think it's generational. The ones that make you fall in love with that particular sport, that's who's going to be the GOAT for you, you know?
Yeah, I like Magic Johnson. But here's what I think about LeBron. He would have gotten beaten up back then. He wouldn't have 38,000 points. I think he probably
seems like pretty solid, though.
Well, I'd say, but back then, it wasn't patty cake baker's man. It was called boxing.
Right,
really
yeah. Well, I think he'd do all right. I think he'd toughen up.
Yeah, toughen up. And if you're getting hammered like he is by Bill Lambier, your lady buddy, and Rick Mahorn, how would you like to go in the middle and get drilled? I mean, seriously, really? Seriously, or really seriously? Really?
I think LeBron has played against, and far be it for me to be complimenting LeBron because I really don't like him. To be honest, it's his personality that's pretty off-putting. But, he did play against Ron Artest, and that is probably our generation's Bill Lambier, So I think LeBron can be pretty tough when need be. I think he's probably gotten so used to calls and things going his way that he's gotten a little softer in this age. That wouldn't fare well, like you said, in the 80s and the 90s at all, and probably not the 70s. I do like this comment, though, about Bird easily being the greatest small forward. I love Larry Bird. I think Larry Bird's greatest asset, though, was that mouth, because he would tell you exactly what he was going to do to you, and then he would go down and back it up. So he's definitely one of my goats, too.
You want a great Larry Bird story, Megan?
Absolutely.
I got it for you. Covering the Pistons in the Pacers game. I addressed him, by the way, Coach Bird.
Okay.
That's what I did. He's a coach. I respect a coach when he's a coach.
Right, absolutely.
So I waited until after the media availability was done. So I asked Coach Bird, can I ask you a question that's not related to your team? Sure. No problem. Really nice. Swear to God, he's really, really, really nice. And I said, Coach, I realize you weren't one of the better athletes out there. I really realize that. But what made you better than a lot of your opponents? And this is a lesson that I ended up going out there and putting in my book too. Megan, lessons from the microphone. And he says to me, the one thing I did was I thought 3 steps ahead of my opponent. Number one, he's a gym rat. We all know he was a gym rat.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
But the thing that I've learned, and I've applied it to my lifetime, and maybe who knows, maybe it's something you'll do if you're not already doing it. 3 steps ahead of the game, and you're going to be fine.
Right,
but hearing it from him, Megan, who's obviously not a great athlete, but can outsmart anybody, outshoot anybody, and outwork anybody, thinking 3 steps ahead is gold.
Do you think that that's why Jokic is so good? Because he's not incredibly athletic. His jump shot is terrible. It looks like he's playing ball in flip flops. But he is he's able to facilitate so well. So I think that being able to see ahead is probably something that makes him so good.
I think you're right on target, Megan. If you're not a great athlete, Megan, what you have to do is you have to compensate for it someplace.
Right, yeah.
If you're thinking down court, then you have to be a facilitator.
Right.
Yeah. He doesn't play defense, so he's got to find a way to overcome that deficiency. Then again, nowadays, defense is a foreign language.
Right, yeah. In some scenarios, you want to watch some good defense, you want to watch some good lane play, go watch women's ball.
Yeah, well, don't worry. We're leading to that. It's GMTA. You know what that stands for?
What's that?
Great minds think alike.
Oh, okay.
Because we're going to be talking about that just a moment. So to answer your question, Megan, Luka Doncic is a big thinker. He doesn't play defense. Then again, nobody plays defense. All they do is live
Right.
on the jump shot this day. That's why the NBA, unfortunately, they have to resort to play-in games, and they have to overcome load management, and they have to use mid-season tournaments to try to keep some sort of interest in their offense.
Right.
It's awful. So you've got to find ways. If they went back to the old way and played defense and they played hard, the guys didn't take days off. They have to play 65 games to earn an award. That's bad.
Right.
But,
right. Yeah. I'll say this. I think that obviously that rule needs to be in effect because it was being abused. I am a Spurs fan, and so my coach invented this workload management. So I have to, kind of bear some of the weight on that, I guess.
right.
But when it's used situationally, like Pop would rest his players at the end of the regular season before the playoffs. When you use it like that, I get it. That's why all our players were old with us, because they were able to maintain their career in a long way because he managed it that way. And so when used that way, that's great, but when you're doing it throughout the regular season and then to the point that you have to put a rule in that 65 games have to be played in order for you to win an award, that stinks because as a Spurs fan, who's the defensive player of the year this year? It's Wemby. But because of that rule, he won't get it. And you can, and I like Jaren Jackson Jr. and it'll be his second one, and congratulations to him. But he's not really the defensive player of the year this year.
I actually met Greg Popovich initially when he was an assistant coach for the Golden State Warriors,
Oh,
and
wow.
then I caught up with him again when the Toronto Raptors took on the San Antonio Spurs over at that arena. I was in town covering the Nebraska Cornhuskers and the Michigan Wolverines in the Alamo Bowl. My God.
Yeah, hoping he's able to come back. We miss him.
Can you imagine if we got in a room talking hoops together, what would happen with us?
Oh, yeah, I would love it.
I'm telling you, I'm looking forward to getting out there. I'll get Candy out there, the big Texan, and you and I'll just talk hoops. She's a big football girl, but now I'm getting to know you, and I'm telling you, I have an actual piece of the floor of the Pistons and the Bad Boy Championships over in my hallway.
Oh, wow, cool. I have a piece of a floor that Becky Hammond signed.
Oh, did you really?
Mm-hmm.
He had a great coach there too, but the Pistons PR staff gave it to me because they appreciated my loyalty covering the team throughout the years, and I showed up at all the games. So it's a good relationship I've had with the Detroit Pistons. And every now and then what I'll do is tag you on Twitter with some of their stuff because it's my loyalty and my feelings for the Detroit Pistons. But
I love the turnaround that they've had this season, and I felt it coming for a couple of seasons. I knew when they drafted Cade how special he was going to be. Once again, I'm here in Amarillo, so OK State isn't that far from me, and definitely was able to watch him in Big 12 basketball. He, obviously Dom is a good friend of mine, and I'm sorry, my dogs are barking. He wasn't happy whenever they drafted Cade because you guys had Killian Hayes, like you already had a guard. And I kept telling him, like, it's okay. Like, Cade's the better answer. He's the answer, man. And, once they finally got the right coach in place, I think that Detroit is going to go far. Now, it's not going to equate to a ton of postseason success this year, but you're going to get there, and you're going to get there legitimately.
So let's go full circle on this whole thing now that you just brought this up and you brought something. He wears number 2, which is Chuck Daly's number. Mm-hmm. Okay. Chuck Daly, well, that number is retired up the Raptors because he won 2 championships. He has a number. I'm going to throw something at your way. You're probably never going to think about it. If you ever use it on Sip Off your basketball show, you got it here first. Okay. So Chuck Daly coached the Cleveland Cavaliers before he became with the Pistons, right? Had a really tough time there.
Oh, okay.
Jay's Vickers staff coached the Cleveland Cavaliers. What do they have in common? They went from the Cavaliers to the Pistons, and all they did is win.
Right, indeed. I had hoped that the situation with Monty would work out. I'm a real big fan of Monty Williams, and I'm actually a fan of Steven Silas too. So the fact that he was going to bring him on, or he did bring him on as his assistant, I really liked that move. It just didn't work out, and I'm sorry to see that. But obviously this year has been much better. So I think that they're going to continue to grow and give it a 2-3 year grace period right there. And I think Detroit and San Antonio will be back to their battle days.
Oh, yeah, I'll bet you enjoyed that series.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you got the best of us on that one for sure. But even though we didn't mention the topics, you go with the flow of the show, and we get two people that know the sport quite well, then it's
Right.
really good. The Detroit Pistons are a feel-good story, and it's
Mhm.
unfortunate that the center for the Spurs went down, and of course Popovich had the stroke. I wish both of them well in the
Oh
recovery.
yeah, it's rough in San Antonio right now. I'll be honest, I haven't watched all the games into the last part of the season. De'Aaron is also out for the season. He had to have something done to his pinky, I believe. And I mean, I don't blame shutting him down for the rest of the season. I would rather him be healthy for next season. And as far as Wemby goes, it's been all I've heard is positive, saying that they caught it really early, and that they expect for him to be okay. I'm a little more concerned, and I know this isn't necessarily on our topic list. I'm a little more concerned for somebody that's Damian Lillard's age with that injury. I think the younger and being able to catch it at a young age, you'll be on top of watching it. But what's been going on in Dame's body for these last few years, you know?
I think it has to be on a topic list for us to talk about it. It's just
Mhm.
we just go with the flow. Think about it. It's just it's newsworthy. We talk about it.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
him so well.
I feel real bad for Dame. Like at this point in his career, I feel like Milwaukee was kind of a last ditch effort to try and figure out winning a ring. And it should work on paper, him and Giannis together. I like them together. Some of the pieces they gave up to make that happen are obviously missed this year. And they got to start thinking about a different center in Milwaukee as well.
I think that when they made the decision hire Doc Rivers and got rid of the coach a year ago, that was a mistake.
Huge
I
mistake.
still haven't been able to figure that move out, and we'll save it for another day. That was just.
Okay.
But no, anything that comes up as we talk, it's worthy and it's fair game as far as I'm concerned, and I know you feel the same way. So with that said, let's go back on the NCAA side before we hit the women.
Okay.
And one of our favorite people is John Calipari, who isn't a fan of the transfer portal, especially during March Madness. There's more than
Right.
500 players in the transfer portal during March Madness, and John Calipari of Arkansas doesn't like it, and there's a lot of other ones that don't. What are your thoughts about Coach Calipari?
I'm sorry. I laugh because John Calipari complaining about rules. Is he serious? He is an epic rule breaker. So, and in the ways college sports is today, it's made for John. So I only take it as entertainment value, to be perfectly honest. It's not anything that they can change currently. For spring sports, you get 45 days, and for the portal. So I hate that it falls this way, and they need to adjust it. Absolutely. They need a lot of things to change in college sports right now, and because the sports has been revolutionized. So it's not the same product that we saw 5 years ago, and in 5 years it's not going to be the same product either. They're going to fine tune this, and they're going to figure it out, and once they get a governing faction over NCAA sports, it'll be much better. So I just laugh that John's complaining about rules.
Well, he's a one and done king, and now he can't even do those because he got the transfer portal.
Right. Well,
I
think that's probably why he's so angry, because what the transfer portal does is it enables people to stay in college longer and do what's best for them in their career. And whereas he was the king of the one and done, so every single year he's creating a new team, new roster. You would think you would capitalize on the portal, but it's passing him by, I guess.
Well, he did pick up a good player from our neck of the woods called John L. Davis, who played at Florida Atlantic. And he had a big role in that win over Rick Pitino.
I mean, I think John will be just fine. And as we get there, his matchup that they have coming up against Texas Tech, this is the 3-10 matchup, and this is not your typical 10 seed whatsoever. This is it's a John Calipari led team. And you would think, being his first year at a program, he wouldn't be doing that great, but he's the king of the one and done. So his roster changes every single year. It probably really doesn't matter what college he's at. So he's and the entire team started getting in their groove as soon as conference play hit. They struggled a little bit and then they found their groove. And right now they're getting hot at the right time. And I'm kind of reminded of when Candace Parker went to Chicago to win a championship there. When the Sky went into the playoffs, they were a 500 team. Everybody got healthy at the right time. So if you can get hot at the right time, it doesn't matter what your record was in conference play.
Well, first of all, he was 0-5 to start the year. What happened? But remember how he got the job. He had a friend who was a billionaire. He gave him a $5 million NIL budget, and he got burned out at Kentucky, and then he was going to Arkansas. Look what he's done.
Right.
He rejuvenated that program pretty well, as everybody knew that they would.
John will be fine. That's why I say I just laugh about him being upset about the rules. It's all right. He'll find a way around it. He always does.
Well, like you said, the entertainment value, he's fun. I was actually watching Pat McAfee the other day and just laughing at everything the guy said.
Right.
He's a Joseph Lowe. He's an entertainer. Once upon a time, he had a fight with, what was it, the Temple coach, John Chaney, I think it was.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't really care for each other either. And John Chaney let run out of there, and Calipari's winning national championship, getting paid good money.
Like, are we all going to behave like Dan Hurley? Probably not. Are we all going to watch Dan Hurley spiral? Absolutely.
Exactly. Great point. Great mind think alike, Megan. We learned a lot together on our first broadcast day. Great stuff, okay? Right. Megan Price, the star of Chicks and Salsa and Three Chicks in a Pot, and the Sip-Off, who talks about basketball. We're giving her a break from the Sip-Off tonight so she can come on my show, the Motor City Mad Mouth. Another topic I want to get to, considering Andy Ebling and I are covering the NCAA Women's Final Four in April. So let's talk about the predictions in the champion. Apparently, it looks like USC's road got a little bit more difficult. So why don't you give me the Final Four and then who you think is going to win it all?
Okay, so I'm going to actually start in the Sweet 16 range and kind of go through how I think that's going to end up being. So in our first matchup in the Sweet 16, we got the 3 versus the 2 in Notre Dame versus TCU. This matchup is really interesting because TCU, while they are the higher seed, I think they're not quite as the same caliber of a team as Notre Dame. However, TCU has beat Notre Dame this year. I'm picking Notre Dame to come out of this matchup. Then we got Texas versus Tennessee. This is a 1 versus a 5 matchup, and Texas versus Tennessee has already happened this year, and Texas only won by 4 points. Kim Caldwell has impressed me to no ends this season. So it's her first year there at Tennessee. And that's one of those programs that regardless of Pat being in the room or not, she's in the room, so like you didn't take the job from Pat, but it's still her school. It's still her program. She's still there. So that's a hard job to take over. That's like taking over at Duke or taking over at UNC. It's a very hard program to take over. And she does something that we know it's out there, but she's perfected it. She actually she leads the NCAA in substitutions. Favorite thing to do is sub out 5 and 4 players at a time. So when you're in a critical moment, she will sub out all her starting lineup and put in 5 pairs of fresh legs. And when you got 2 minutes left in the fourth, that's a nightmare. So I'm nervous about this matchup. I'm gonna pick Texas, but it could go Tennessee's way. And then we got UNC versus Duke. I think Duke is a better experienced team. They've been together a little bit longer, but their leading scorer was out for illness in the last game. So I think that was a factor, but they got shaken a little bit in that matchup against Oregon. So I think Duke will come back with a vengeance. Then we got Maryland versus South Carolina. Maryland had to go to double overtime versus Alabama to even get to South Carolina. They are not going to beat South Carolina by any means. And no, George, no knock to TCU. I love what they've built there. They built something out of a lot of. They had 4 injuries to their starters last year and had to hold open tryouts in the middle of conference play. So I love a great comeback story. So it's not a knock to TCU, but Hannah Hidalgo Sonia Citrone, and then Olivia Miles and then they're so well coached over there at Notre Dame that I think they get past them in this matchup. Then we got Ole Miss and number 1 UCLA. Ole Miss coming in as the 5 seed, and this is a matchup nightmare for UCLA, the number 1 overall seed. Ole Miss is very tough down low. They're a gritty team anyway. They're not going to outscore a team. But they're going to battle a team to death. And I think that they're not going to stop Lauren Betts, the center presence there for UCLA, but they can contain her. And if they're able to do that, this game is theirs. So I'm actually going with Ole Miss for the upset against UCLA. And then we got LSU versus NC State. This one and the Texas matchup might be matchup of the round right here. Both teams very good in different areas. And it's like where LSU is bad, NC State is very good. And where LSU is very good, NC State struggles a little bit. So got a chance to see NC State at the ACC tournament this past month. And NC State likes to run with 4 guards at a time, and then one's obviously their center. They have a backup center who is comparable to their starting center, and she's absolutely a very big presence. So if you can keep up with NC State, you might be able to beat them, but they're very hard to keep up with, and they're very well coached as well. So I'm going to go with NC State in this matchup. However, LSU absolutely has the ability to win this. It's just that LSU has had some injury issues. And so I don't know what caliber they're going to be at against a team like NC State, where you have to run. And then in the last matchup, we got we got Kansas State versus USC. USC is going to get past Kansas State. Kansas State hasn't looked the same this season as they have in the past couple of seasons. So they got a few good players. Obviously, they have Ioka Lee over there, and then Poindexter as well. They're great, but it doesn't have the same chemistry that they had last year. So I think USC has enough. And they're going to have some momentum off of trying to do this for JuJu, So I think they get past this matchup. Unfortunately, they're going to end up probably facing UConn in the next round. So UConn has to face Oklahoma. This is a 2-3 matchup. Oklahoma just got the number 1 recruit in the country to commit out of Aaliyah Chavez. And so she's in Lubbock here, been able to follow her entire career. I was a little surprised by the OU pick at the time. She just announced yesterday, but honestly, the more and more I think about it, the better I think she's going to fit. And so I'm excited to see this matchup, even though I think UConn is going to make a very big example out of OU, and it's probably going to be at least a deficit of 25 points. I'm going to get to imagine Aaliyah Chavez on this roster, who, by the way, they've been ranked the entire season. They've just been quietly winning. Nobody's really been talking about them because they're in the SEC and there's much flashier programs, but they've been solid. So, I think Aaliyah is going to be a great fit there. However, UConn, they are finally healthy after 3 years. And from the way it looks, it kind of looks like it's Gino's swan song. It's not just Paige's swan song. He's been very emotional in these press conferences after the first couple of rounds. And then also on senior night there at UConn, he's very emotional. It just, I don't know. It's giving he's done. So I think UConn's on a mission. I think those girls know that it's probably his last go, and they're going to come in swinging.
I guarantee one thing about this show. I won't lose my voice because you're the encyclopedia when it comes to this stuff.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, when it comes to women's basketball, I can go.
You know what? I am so impressed. It's unbelievable.
Well, thank you.
There may be times I lose my voice. It ain't going to be tonight with you. Seriously, seriously. I have that hat made up too, by the way. Tell you what. I'll give you my final 2 because that's about all I know. But I also want to make an analogy when you talk about Tennessee with Pat Summitt, who I know you're alluding to. To take over the Pat Summitt job is like taking over UCLA under John Wooden.
Right,
it's
absolutely
impossible. And I had an opportunity to meet Coach Wood many years ago when they took on the University of Georgia at Pauley Pavilion. And I tell you, I swear by that pyramids of success, and I mentioned that in my interview.
Right.
So when my time is done, Candy's going to have a lot of tapes, and she's going to try to come up with a barrage of some of my best interviews. But Coach Wooden was there. So when you look at Pat Summitt, shoes to fill, and then you look at John Wooden, that's the mark of what you have. So my finals, and you're the encyclopedia. I'm going to go with Connecticut against South Carolina, and I do
I think
believe.
that is a very logical couple of picks
Yeah.
for that. I obviously I'm not going to pick against my team for this year for the first time in a really long time. It does look like Texas has a chance at winning it. They don't quite look as polished as South Carolina or UConn, so I don't know that they can really do it. But in my bracket, I picked UConn versus Texas with Texas as the winner. However, it's probably going to be UConn versus South Carolina. And there's just something different about UConn this year. I'm leaning towards them.
Okay. I have a question for you. I graduated from the University of South Florida in Tampa. What are your thoughts about what the Bulls have done with that program? I know Jose Fernandez been with them a long time. I know they lost to Tennessee by a lot, but what do you know about the USF Bulls women?
So the women there, they're great at 3-point shooting, and they definitely speed up the pace as well. So just a very well-rounded program.
Well, I was pulling for the Bulls. What's I got to prove for this? To me, USF communication guy Brian Segrist is the one who pulled this thing off for me, being it's my alma mater, and I'm on their media distribution list. So I was at the 1982 Final Four when Michael Jordan won it all. I didn't cover it. I ended up buying a couple tickets.
Okay.
And took a Greyhound bus. That's another story for you there. I was there when Jordan sunk that shot with time going out. It was an incredible Final Four when you look at all the history behind it. But now to have an opportunity to cover one is unbelievable. One of the biggest stories I'll tell you, though, is Gary Bender was calling it for CBS. And then when I was living in Phoenix, I had an opportunity to go out there and meet Gary, and he gave me his book and he signed it for me. So it was unbelievable.
Very cool.
That Final Four. Now I'm going there on the women's side, where basketball is really starting to make a lot of noise. And yes, it would have been great if JuJu Watkins would have been there, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it is. That was something that I had to put the phone down and probably not talk about basketball for about 12 hours because it hurts your feelings. She doesn't necessarily play for my team. But what she does for the sport is amazing. It's like watching poetry in motion. It's the same thing watching Caitlin. They're so good at it. You can't help but watch whether they play for your team or not, whether they hang 40 on your team, because they're probably gonna.
All right. My final question, the Big Ten. Can you imagine Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA are in it? And USC and UCLA were making noise in the tournament, unlike a lot of the other schools. What are your thoughts on the four schools being in the Big Ten?
So, on the women's side of things, I can probably give a better perspective there. As far as basketball, Big Ten is known for physicality, and they're known for their defense and their size. And so they slow the pace down a little bit. And you're definitely going to feel that presence. So UCLA and USC play a different type of basketball. And I think that the reason they were probably so successful this season is because they're fast. They play very fast-paced offense. But I don't think that, obviously, we saw what it was like with Ohio State this year, a very well-built program, a very tough, normal Big Ten basketball program, not an easy out. And then we saw Nebraska is never an easy out when it comes to the women. Iowa is probably the only one that plays a very similar type of basketball as the Pac-12 teams that you mentioned. And Oregon's known for pretty much the same thing as well. They've been the queens of 3-point shooting for a long time. So I definitely think that Big Ten basketball is going to have to adjust, because I think that that's the way that basketball is going in general, not just in women's ball. But I love those physical battles that come out of the Big Ten.
Big Ten is physical in every sport.
All
you have to do is look at football and what happened to those schools when they got to the Big Ten. Those scores, they didn't have shootouts when they got to the Big Ten. Factor in the weather, factor in the physicality, and USC, Oregon, Washington, and UCLA found themselves in a much different animal, just like Nebraska was when they joined the conference in Penn State. They came down to earth. They stepped up in class of competition, but they
Right.
also earned a good payday for being part of the Big Ten as well. And we could
Right.
get into that another time, but since we're on a lot of different subjects, it's really great that we brought that up as well as USF and everything else we talked about. So it's
Absolutely.
it's great having Megan Price on the Motor City Mad Mouse show. I look forward to bringing her back more often. Hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, your work schedule works out, maybe we can bring you back next Wednesday. We'll see, Candy, and you can stay in touch if it works out. I'll
Sure.
cook up some more great basketball topics. If I'm going to bring a basketball person on here, it's really you. I have another person I
Well,
can
thank
bring here, South Florida, but when I talk about you and I being able to talk about the sport and the level that you were able to take it, to me, it's just unbelievable. I want to thank everybody in the chat room
Oh,
for
yeah.
their
Thank you,
intelligent
everybody.
questions as well. Megan took them all, and I just sat there and watched you. Now I know why you do well on Three Chicks in a Pod,
Well,
Chicks
thank
and
you.
Salsa, and everything you do. You're a gifted commentator, and I've worked with a lot of great commentators over the years and gotten to know them. Like Leslie Visser was somebody I've worked with before, and I had an opportunity to work with Audra Martin of the Minnesota Twins, and the list
Yeah.
goes on and on. And I actually did an interview at the Super Bowl, Carissa Thompson. But I'll take your knowledge about what you do, and I'll stack it up against anybody. I say that because I've had 51 minutes and change to be able to look at the way we're able to connect in a lot of different levels and how
Absolutely.
you acclimate with your questions and answers. And you get right to the point, but you certainly make your point. It's not the
Well, thank
quantity of what you say, it's the quality, and that's what I've noticed tonight on Motor City Mad Mouth. Once again, in case you're joining us, you can see the show on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. The Sports Exchange will be at the top of the hour. We'll have a snack deck there. Candy Ebling will be on. But Megan, I can't thank you very much for joining us. So one more time, I want you to let everybody know how they can get a hold of you, how they can watch on anything that you do. The floor is yours, whether it's Twitter and all that. And I am really delighted that we were able to make this work. And our days ahead with you and I as a tandem, I look forward to doing it. You're a true professional in every sense of the word.
Well, thank you so much. You can just search the Queen of Hoop and you'll find me on Facebook, Instagram, or X. You can also look up 806 Sports. So that's the radio show that I do here locally. If you are in the Amarillo area, that's on 1071, 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. If you're not local, you can still find us online at 806 Sports on Facebook. Oh, and also check out the Chicks Podcast. That's our YouTube channel for all the Chicks shows.
Great stuff. Candy Ebling, Livia, Candy Ebling going to end this show before I sign off with another final station break. Go ahead, Can.
If you see that red subscribe button in that lower right-hand corner, click it, like it, share us with all your friends and family. If you listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you find your podcast. Normally, Monday nights, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football. Wednesday nights, you just never know what we're talking about, but Scott always tries to do a one-on-one show. So tonight, it's basketball. And tomorrow night, then he talks hockey, and then we have Fire Up. And again, you just never know what we're going to be talking about on that show as well.
I might have to come on a Friday.
There we go. There we go. And then let's see. The South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book. Years in the making. Scott's 40 plus years in the media industry and how it has changed and evolved. Lessons from the microphone, tuning into the enduring wisdom of visionary leaders. If you like some of the stories that you've heard tonight, you can read more of them. You can see a young Scott with a young Muhammad Ali and a young Tommy Lasorda. Go check out the book. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there's a plethora of great content. So go check it out. If you want to advertise, call Scott 954-304-4941. And if you want to be a guest, email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to you, Scott.
So Megan, you have an open invite to come on any show you want, just so you know that.
Well, thank you.
You do. I'm looking forward to it. Man,
Yeah,
awesome.
definitely. I'll definitely be back for sure.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. This was meant to happen. It did happen. And you and I, as in the old words of good times, you are dynamite.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, well, you say my voice, I can slip that one in there because you did an incredible job preserving it. But anyway, that does conclude this edition of the Motor City Mad Mouse Show. So We want to thank Megan Price for being my special guest tonight. So on behalf of Megan, my name is Scott Morgan off the Motor City Mad Mouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Motor City Mad Mouth. We're talking Queen of Hoops with Megan Price, and we're talking hoops, pro, and college. We gave a lot of it to you, but the next time we come up, I will have plenty more good stuff to run by Megan. So good night, everybody. Sports Exchange is coming at close to the top of the hour, maybe a few minutes after. Thank you very much for joining us, Megan. Look forward to doing it again.
Thanks.